It's great to be here at the Yukon Geoscience Forum in one of the Canadian cities most synonymous with the mining industry. And thank you for taking the time to be here today. And like I said, I know it was a great party last night, so I appreciate you coming in and listening to me this morning. Much has happened over the past year with impacts from the ongoing pandemic and the invasion of Ukraine being felt on a global scale, with both having brought the security of supply vulnerabilities to sharp focus for many countries and consequently accelerating the desire of Canadians to source and produce locally with greater self-reliance. This priority was recently reinforced at the highest political levels, with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland saying in October that Canada must and will show similar generosity in fast-tracking, for example, the energy and mining projects our allies need to heat their homes and to manufacture electric vehicles. There is no doubt that Canada and its allies need stability when it comes to ensuring demand for mine products is met responsibly. Our industry has a particularly important role to play in ensuring the supplies needed, both by us and our allies, are readily available and produced using the highest standards in the world. With instability resulting from the current events affecting the world today, it is imperative that our industry, the bedrock of the Canadian economy, be provided the supports it needs to succeed. The good news is that in many ways, mining is flourishing, with the mining sector having contributed $125 billion, or roughly 5% to Canada's total nominal GDP in 2021. Our industry employs over 400,000 workers across the country in mineral extraction, smelting, fabrication, and manufacturing, and indirectly employs an additional 263,000. Proportionally, the mining industry is also the largest private sector employer of Indigenous people, providing over 16,500 jobs in communities across the country. The Yukon is a big contributor to these numbers. The production value of the industry in 2021 was $745 million, with gold as the top-ranked commodity by value of production, followed by copper, a metal absolutely essential to low-carbon technologies. The direct contribution of Yukon's minerals and metals sector represented 15% of its real GDP, and in 2021, its exports reached $162 million. For generations, mining has played an essential role as an employer and economic contributor in the Yukon, and directly employs over 1,000 individuals in 2021. Companies with operations in the Yukon are leaders in climate action, specifically committing to lowering GHG emissions and using innovative technologies and R&D to reach the goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Not only are we focused on minimizing our own carbon footprint, we're also playing a critical role in the global energy transition. Now, I know that I'm preaching to the converter in this room, but let's once again reflect that our industry provides the building blocks for clean technology, like wind turbines, like solar panels, like nuclear energy, and electric vehicle batteries. There is no question that the world needs mining in order to achieve a greener future. While our industry has understood this for some time, awareness outside our sector on the essential role mining plays at the ground floor of this process is also growing. In fact, this enhanced understanding that mining has a significant role to play in green technology revolution has led Canadians to show greater enthusiasm than ever before for the industry. For the past 12 years, the Mining Association of Canada has worked with Abacus Data to access public opinion on Canada's mining sector. Let me walk you through some of the findings. This year, let me make sure this works. Did you see a new slide there? All right, I can't see it from here. Oh, there it is. Okay, perfect. This year, support is at an all-time high, with 83% supporting mining projects when there's a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. 80% reporting that they have a positive feeling about producers of minerals and metals in Canada. 84% giving mining companies in Canada good or acceptable performance in contributing new materials for use in greener and cleaner technologies, and 78% saying they have a positive feeling about Canadian mining companies. Upon learning about Canada's leadership in sustainable mining via Towards Sustainable Mining, a globally recognized sustainability program that supports mining companies in managing key environmental and social responsibilities, 88% believe it is a good idea for government to support Canadian companies that adhere to such standards in their efforts to win in export markets and attract investment to Canada. As one of the lowest carbon intensity producers of mineral and metal products in the world, Canada fulfills the need for mine materials better. And with higher environmental and social standards than most competing jurisdictions, and we are pleased to see this increasing recognition by the public at large. The generally positive sentiment about the mining sector is due to several factors. It goes without saying that it's partly because of the economic benefits and well-paying jobs for Canadians and communities created by mining across this country. But the survey also reveals that people believe the industry has been making an effort to reduce its environmental footprint and build positive relationships with Indigenous people. There's enthusiasm about the role Canadian mining is playing in elevating mining standards in other parts of the world too. Not only is the public on board from what we've seen through these figures, but our Prime Minister has spoken extensively on the importance of mining, stating during his time at COP26 that Canada has access to a large number of the critical minerals that are needed for production of batteries and production of modern technologies. The challenge is the extraction and processing of those in our country is more costly because we have higher environmental standards and higher labor standards than the countries that are right now busy cornering the market on those sorts of productions. The positive impression of Canada's mining sector is timely, given the enormous anticipated demand for mine materials to support decarbonization. And frankly, I think we've earned this reputation. Now, why do I say that? Because for the past few decades, Canada's mining sector has made a concerted effort to improve how it operates and to earn the trust of Canadians. Across Canada, mines work in partnership with Indigenous communities through negotiated agreements, the likes of which not found elsewhere in the world. Canada is home to the first fully electric mines built by companies like Lumont and Agnico Eagle. Teck Resources this year announced a donation of 14,000 hectares of land for conservation, committing to a net positive impact on nature over time. And as you know, the industry has come together to develop and implement Towards Sustainable Mining. Towards Sustainable Mining, or TSM, is a program originally created in 2004 to drive performance improvements across a range of social and environmental issues where it matters most, at the mine site level. This focus on mine site performance makes TSM a go-to system for investors and manufacturers like Tesla, looking to invest in and purchase responsibly mined materials. It's a mandatory component of MAC membership. TSM enhances credibility and ensures companies are being held accountable in critical areas of the mining process, such as climate change, Indigenous engagement, biodiversity conservation, water stewardship, tailings management, and much more. Today, TSM has been adopted by 11 other mining associations around the world, including most recently in Guatemala, a country that has struggled with mining and had many challenges and at times violent conflicts. We are especially proud to think that Canada's TSM will raise the bar and contribute to better outcomes there. As a constantly evolving program, TSM is not static. and it seeks to encompass the many focal points of our industry. And that is particularly true today as we work on a new standard focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion. TSM has a proven track record of driving performance improvement over time. You could see it in the data. It's all publicly available, where performance levels across all indicators 15 years ago pale in comparison to what they are today. This is what makes TSM particularly useful to tackle an issue that has plagued the mining sector for a long time, if not forever. While Canada's mining industry may stand out for the progress it has made in Indigenous inclusion, it otherwise has major challenges. Let's be honest, miners in Canada are primarily white and male. Visible minorities, LGBTQ+, and women are grossly underrepresented. While I've seen the participation of women in corporate offices improve over the last decade or so, it remains low and has barely changed at all at the site level. The homogeneous nature of our industry, particularly in the face of labor market shortages and increasing demand for skilled workers, clearly must change if we are to ensure our sector remains competitive and able to fulfill that global insatiable appetite and demand for our products. The question we need to ask ourselves is, how can we make Canada's mining sector where all Canadians feel they can belong? While there's a clear potential for a more respectful, equitable, diverse, and inclusive mining workforce, many companies are struggling to achieve this objective. As EDI becomes a more central tenet in ESG narratives, companies are rightly being held accountable by investors and as well the public at large to improve their performance in this increasingly important space. Change is always possible. BHP made a commitment a few years ago to achieve gender parity by 2025. And when its Jansen Potash project transitions into operations, it will be with a gender-balanced workforce. Now, while we don't know if they'll actually achieve this target, the progress made in the past few years is significant and as well inspiring. Another company that is leading the way in prioritizing this work is Rio Tinto, particularly through the February release of Everyday Respect, a report focused on a comprehensive external review of its workplace culture, commissioned as part of its commitment to ensure sustained cultural change across its global operations. The review, which is proactively publicly disclosed, was carried out by former Australian Sex Determination Commissioner Elizabeth Broderick and identified findings of bullying, sexual harassment, racism, and other forms of discrimination throughout the company. The report, which outlines 26 detailed recommendations, is informing work being carried out to improve how the company prevents and responds to discrimination and unacceptable workplace behaviors. I really do commend Rio Tinto for taking the time and the courage to put such sensitive information transparently out there in the public domain. And it has served as a jump-off point for many other companies to take the time to ask themselves these same very difficult questions and make the issue of harassment, bullying, discrimination more front and center. Accountability and commitments to do better are important first steps, and the strong support by our members, MAC members, to be more active in this space inspired the work behind the new TSM Inclusive and Respectful Workplaces Protocol, which will be finalized in the next number of months. This draft protocol, which has been published for public review, so you can go online and see it, was developed in collaboration with MAC's TSM Community of Interest Advisory Panel, as well as with the Minerals Council of Australia, and its members with the support of TSM partner associations across the globe. The protocol will focus on inclusive and respectful workplaces and includes a corporate strategy that is complemented by site-level policies, processes, and performance. At the mine site, MAC and its members are defining criteria for comprehensive engagement with workers and relevant external stakeholders to develop effective EDI policies and processes. For example, reviewing human resources and other business processes to identify potential barriers and biases. At the same time, Mining Association Canada is exploring criteria that promote safe and respectful workplaces, including policies and processes to mitigate, respond to, and address instances of unsafe, harmful, or disrespectful behavior. And important to the conversation with investors around EDI metrics and performance, the draft protocol outlines approaches to collecting data, reporting on this data, and setting objectives for EDI. By holding mining companies to account, this new protocol will inspire and compel improvements in the mining sector, ensuring a sense of belonging for all of those who work within it, not just in Canada, but internationally as well. With TSM having been adopted by mining chambers around the world, included by heavyweights like Australia, like Brazil, it is our hope and intent that this new protocol will lead to positive change globally. The emphasis by the industry on climate action, on innovation, and on enhanced EDI practices is due in large part to the heightened demand, kind of see this theme I keep on bringing back, heightened demand for our materials and the knowledge that we must mine them responsibly. Not only is the Canadian public supportive of these efforts, as we've seen through the polling results that I went through, but the federal government has perhaps never, ever been so keen on our sector, doling out funding of historic proportions, exemplified best by the most recent federal budget released this past spring, as well as this month's fall economic statement. With a commitment of $3.8 billion focused specifically on critical minerals development, the federal budget of 2022 positions Canada's minerals and metals industry for success as a partner in accomplishing Canada's goal of a greener future while also enhancing greater supply chain resiliency, particularly in battery and advanced manufacturing materials. Budget 2022 reinforces the government's commitment to climate action and supply chain security goals by providing strategic funding and programmatic supports to Canada's minerals and metals sector with very specific commitments, including $80 million to public geoscience and exploration to help find the next generation of critical minerals deposits and the doubling of the Mineral Exploration Tax Credit, or METC, for targeted critical minerals, including nickel, copper, cobalt, rare earths, and uranium. This METC commitment is in particular is telling of the government's understanding of the role we must play in providing the materials needed for clean energy solutions. In order to provide the responsibly sourced materials needed for technologies that we increasingly depend on, we first need to know where the deposits lie. I strongly suspect that this budget commitment will place Canada securely in the top spot for global exploration spending in the next year or so. However, when it comes to building a mine from the exploration phase through to operation, we also need to do better in Canada if we are to fulfill our potential in being the trusted supplier the world needs. As Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson said repeatedly at PDAC this past June, if an average mine takes 15 years to bring to production in the context of this energy transition, we don't have 15 years if we're actually going to provide enough of the minerals to be able to support just the battery development. There is no question that in order for our goal of a greener future to come to fruition, we need metals and minerals in enormous quantities. And the Yukon and Canada's North, more broadly, has a pivotal role to play in supplying the materials needed to meet this growing demand. While the mining industry is truly pan-Canadian, with operations from coast to coast to coast, it is particularly significant to remote and northern Canada. Mining is the largest private sector driver in Canada's Arctic, employing approximately 8,500 people. Proportionally, the industry is the largest private sector employer of Indigenous people in the country, and the territories host the highest per capita demographic of Indigenous people of any subnational jurisdiction in Canada. While recent commitments, like those I just outlined, are positive, there is no doubt that our sector continues to face challenges when fulfilling the demands for our products. The future of Canada's mining industry lies increasingly in remote and northern regions. But the infrastructure deficit in this part of the country challenges project economics. Without infrastructure development to enhance investment competitiveness, northern regions and their inhabitants will remain disproportionately reliant on transfer funding for core services and program delivery, and frequently at lower standards than southern Canadian jurisdictions enjoy. Investments in projects such as the Grays Bay Port and Road project in the Slave Geological Province are required if we are to bring northern projects into production. In order for Canada to fulfill its potential as a global mining supplier of choice to be realized, enhanced infrastructure in the north must be prioritized. Strategic investments in energy infrastructure, such as the Kivalliq Hydro Fiber Link, the BC Yukon Power Grid Interconnect, and promising emerging technologies like off-grid small modular reactors are all essential to reduce northern reliance on costly and higher emitting fossil fuels. Off-grid mining companies, which encompass almost all mining operations in the north, and several of which are essential to supplying the critical minerals to low-carbon technologies, are overwhelmingly dependent on liquid fuels for power generation and will remain so until a paradigm shift ushers in the next generation of technologies. We can't afford to fail. We simply cannot. Frankly, our allies in the US and Europe are counting on us. Canada needs to deliver if we are to reduce our reliance on China and on Russia for critical minerals. If we are to continue to have a North American auto sector that's so important to the Canadian economy, if we are to have any chance of fighting climate change, the stakes are really, really high. A stable battery ecosystem is powered by critical minerals, and customers and nations and businesses are lining up to buy from Canada. Battery plant announcements from the Stellantis and LG Energy plans to invest $5 billion to build in Windsor, to the Umicore plans to build $1.5 billion battery supply chain plant that will produce cathode active battery materials, are occurring at a breakneck speed, with many other massive companies, General Motors, Ford, Mercedes, Volkswagen, committing billions to their EV operations in Canada. Indeed, the announcement in July that the Canadian electric vehicles will qualify for tax credits in the US should their batteries contain a certain percentage of material sourced from US free trade partners is also another ringing endorsement for the role Canadian mining plays in providing the low-carbon mine materials needed for the green revolution. Establishing a strong end-to-end supply chain for electric vehicles in Canada, from the mining of lithium and nickel, copper, cobalt, to EV production, provides us with that once-in-a-generation opportunity to position Canada as a sustainable electric vehicle supplier of choice. Now, who wouldn't want to buy an electric vehicle knowing it contained Canadian metals and minerals and was built in Canada using our highest of labor standards, particularly when the alternatives currently come from jurisdictions where these very bona fides are decidedly lacking? In times of growing international uncertainty, indeed peril, and supply chain issues, the world needs more Canadian mining, and we must ensure the sector has the ability to provide a secure and stable supply of minerals and metals essential to Canadians, essential to our allies, and essential to businesses around the world. Canadians have voiced their support, and the clean tech and auto industries are now counting on us to deliver. And now it's time for us to follow through. Thank you.